Hello and welcome back to the podcast. It's been a while since we've been in our own studio, but we are back here. Before we get into today's topic, how are you doing, Sam?
Good. What is this place? Where are we? Yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks, hasn't it, for us? I'm doing really well, and just getting off the back of our Italy trip, and yeah, it's awesome. We're not going to do any spoilers because we're not too sure what the order's going to be, but this is our first week back at HQ, doing some filming and recording. So yeah, things are good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm all right. I've made a few mistakes on a solo project this week, and we had the scaffolders add to the problems, but you adapt and overcome, don't you? I'm reassured to hear other people have these things happen to them. So yeah, it could have been a better week, but it could have been a lot worse as well. And yeah, I think the trip we've just been on and the experience we had at Installer Show, we've maybe not even reflected on that, to be fair. There's been lots of those episodes rolling out, and maybe this one will interrupt those a little bit, so we're not just the Installer Show for 6 weeks running on the podcast. It's been some few weeks, hasn't it, to be fair, for our little podcast?
It has, and I think what I've really liked about it is that it's given us the headspace to think purely about the podcast, because we've been there, representing the podcast, stood in front of people, asking us what the podcast is about, and that's a little bit different to where we've been over the past year and a half, because we're doing this podcast because we love talking about renewables. We love the renewable industry. We want to help improve it. We want to help educate others and ourselves as well. And part of that can end up being feeling like a bit of a hobby style thing. And I think what's been really nice is to focus on it as a business, which it is, but also how do we add value to people listening, to people watching, and also to brands that want to reach people with really good products. I think it's been a really interesting sort of month or two.
Yeah, the conversations through the stand with brands and visitors was really encouraging, and didn't realise our podcast reached maybe as far as it does. So we've underplayed ourselves a little bit maybe, and that's nice to see people getting value from the chats we have, and wanting to be involved as well with a few guests who are going to be coming through in studio with us, or perhaps us again out on location, and that's a really nice thing for us to be doing. The Italy trip was something else, and there is going to be an uptick in our production quality thanks to Dan,
the video man.
Dan, the video man. What a star he is. So yeah, hopefully some of the podcasts might look a little bit different as well as they're rolling out, and certainly the Italy trip will do. But we're not just going to waffle on about what we've been up to the last few weeks. We do have a topic in mind for today, don't we? And
we do.
I'll let you introduce it.
Right, I'm going to take a minute of your time to talk about an exciting product from Proteus, and that is their 3-module 4-pole RCBO. And you've had some experience on this, Mark, haven't you?
Yeah, we've just popped some into the training space we're building for our EV charge points, and they're really handy because they go straight into your traditional spine board without additional enclosure or taking up any extra space than a normal 3-pole MCB would. And you get all pole isolation, so your neutral opens as well. It's type A, and it's even bi-directional, which at a 3-phase level is an absolute game changer. It's a killer product in the Proteus range.
I've had so many experiences where you've had to put another enclosure in and then an RCD above an MCB to try and get around that whole RCD protection, and it's a nightmare. So that is a fantastic product from Proteus. Go and check it out if you have any application for it. Anyway, let's get back to the podcast. Yeah, we do. We have a topic in mind, and the topic that we want to discuss, because of the day-to-day runnings of our businesses where we're both doing renewables kind of most days, is the backwards compatibility of battery storage systems, panels, EV chargers, basically anything in renewables really, and whether or not there should be a greater obligation for these manufacturers and these brands to actually make sure they are honouring maybe 1 or 2 generations backwards from when they bring out a new product, because there seems to be a bit of a innovation seems to be overtaking potentially the sustainability aspect of all of this stuff.
Yeah, that's the tricky aspect to it, isn't it? With all this innovation, it often encourages consumers to want to upgrade, and then in doing so, they often have to obsolete the kit they've already got, and that's not good for the environment, especially if there's not an active second-hand market for this stuff. And if someone else is already upgrading from it, it's unlikely other people are going to be choosing to buy it. I think that's just the nature of the marketplace. So I do think we need that desperately. Compatibility even between brands of certain batteries, and how that works. I'm not sure. There has to be a way of doing that though, and certainly insular to a brand itself. if you're innovating a new product, it shouldn't be that it won't work with the one prior to it, in my opinion, anyway. And that's just thinking of inverters and batteries. And I know you want to speak about the panels as well, but I think that should be a thing.
Yeah, I think there should be. I think the danger with this sort of idea is that it stands in the way of innovation because a brand is being anchored to one or two generations back of their previous product. I think 2 generations is probably one step too far, but certainly the generation that the new generation is replacing, I think there wants to be some sort of a backwards compatibility element of it where that system can at least integrate and be shown on the same platform as the one that you're now that you're now bringing out, rather than kind of telling customers, okay, you've got to basically scrap that system now and buy the new one. Because me and you both hate the whole payback kind of style culture that renewables is pushed onto customers, mainly because of the feed-in tariff era when the payback time was fairly easy to calculate. But if we do just touch on that Voldemort subject for a minute, is that most of these systems, unless you're in a big commercial setting, are probably like a 10-year payback, something like that, depending on how you calculate it and all that. I'm not going to go into all that. But let's just say, for argument's sake, it's a 10-year payback. Over that 10 years, that product generation is going to change. Like, there's going to be a new battery comes out, there's going to be some new panels that come out. It's probably going to be, 1 or 2 generations of, or maybe more generations of that inverter, of that battery, of that panel, of that EV charger. And if you want to add to that system, how do you stack your payback? And this again is why I don't really like this whole payback culture. How do you stack that payback calculation against having to then fully replace your system because you want a little bit more capacity to maybe do backup protection, or you've got more demand in the property, or there's a new scheme that the government released to, like, for grid flexibility and all this other sort of stuff, where you want to just add another battery module and you're having to try and find something on eBay to add to it. And for me, that seems to be a really big issue that we're all kind of not talking about, and we're just really eager to just fit the newest kit. And obviously, because of that eagerness, the manufacturers are really eager to bring out the newest kit because they're fighting for that kind of market share and that headline in the renewables world.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, early adopters paid big time, didn't they, for some of the kit that they've got, and to then look at the marketplace now and not be able to, as you've said, add in easily backup protection or increase the scope of the capacity of their system, where they've maybe now got a heat pump or something that they want to power. And, the only real prospect they've got is to change the system, really. We've got one next week where the customer's got, I think it's a Solax system, or it might be a SunSync that they've got in, but there was no way of adding in the backup protection, even with the brand they've already got, and the batteries weren't compatible with the same brand's current iteration. So they've made the decision, I think they've had this system in 7 years, just to change to this kit we're fitting week to week on all of our other jobs in place of it. And, they're just looking to try and move that on in the second-hand market. That's kind of their view on it, and they consider that they've had the value from that system. I'm not convinced they ever would have got their money back on what they spent based on what they've shown me. So, yeah, it's a really, really tricky one, and you just wonder if there's a way for these things to be made to play nice with each other. That maybe wouldn't need to be a thing. They could just add a specific gateway and that would tie in with the kit they've got and add in another battery system. Because customers who are watching this, you're maybe not aware that if you have 2 different battery systems on your install, they don't fight with each other, maybe too strong a term, but they will charge and discharge into each other. That's kind of what they end up doing, isn't it, when you got the 2 competing systems?
Yeah, they can end up fighting each other a little bit, and some systems are better at kind of fighting against that fight. If you kind of follow me, some of them are better at and have settings in there to try and help with that, but others aren't as good. And the way that I was kind of trying to think of this on the lead up to this podcast was thinking of like the second-hand car market. Like when you get a car and you want to replace it in X amount of years, and you find it fairly easy to move that car on depending on its age and condition, but it's not that hard to move things on, and it's probably because the car that you're buying isn't, like, if you had 2, say, diesel vehicles, the cars aren't actually that much different. You maybe want one that's a different colour, one that's a bit faster, one that's a bit bigger, But the issue in the solar and battery market is that the innovation is so quick that the systems suddenly the older systems look a century old. Like the systems that were being fitted, by the early adopters look archaic. They look really, really old. They probably work absolutely fine, and in some ways maybe even better than some of the modern ones in certain circumstances. But it is very, very difficult to pass those older systems on because the chemistry might be different. The battery brand might not be available, around anymore. Might have pulled out of the UK. I can think of one that I used to fit a lot of that has kind of done that, and so suddenly that customer has invested 10k in a battery system or whatever it cost is, and suddenly they're like, well, I'm kind of between a rock and a hard place because I can't add to my system because I can't get anyone to actually get me the kit. It's not G99 or G100 because we've had that issue before where we can import the kit, but they haven't, because they've kind of half pulled out of the UK, never really officially, but probably have really pulled out of the UK. They've let their G99 and G100 kind of certificates lapse. So we couldn't really do any work to increase the capacity on that anyway. And so that customer that's spent money and has thought that's going to be a 10-year investment and all this, suddenly they're in a position where they're like, well, I either rip it out or I'll just stay where I am and hope nothing happens to it. So yeah, I think the innovation is so quick that it's faster than kind of like the second-hand market can really shift these systems on when they're still not so old that nobody wants them.
Yeah, you pretty much nailed that there for the older kit, that you do need that marketplace for it, and it doesn't exist really, does it? Is the short story. And then the newer stuff, I'm thinking of the Give Energy in particular. We installed loads of the all-in-ones when they first came out. We went big time at that brand when we first came into the sector, and we had a raft of customers who all wanted to expand their systems. So kind of how it goes, they get a system in, they see that it's maybe not quite covering the consumption, then maybe added a heat pump, all the usual stuff, and they want another module. And Give Energy were quite a long time in being able to parallel their systems up, and then they launched the all-in-one too. Or they didn't launch it, they announced it, which kind of killed the demand for that product as was. And lots of these customers were waiting for that to launch, thinking, well, I'll parallel that up with my all-in-one. It wouldn't even enter their minds that they wouldn't be compatible with each other, because why would you really think that? And then as it turns out, it's imminently launching, I think, start September finally. And it isn't going to be backwards compatible with the all-in-one. It's not the same architecture or whatever they call it, I think. That's the terminology they use. So now the options presented to those customers are, well, we've got existing stock of all-in-one ones. You can buy one of those or replace your kit for the all-in-one too. And it's like that isn't really right. And Tesla did the same, didn't they, with the Powerwall 2 and 3? I think there's some software that they're allegedly working on where that's going to be ironed out. And I know with Give Energy, from speaking, I forget his first name, but he's EV Man on Twitter, the HEMS product that they're working on, whatever that stands for, I'm not sure, is supposed to allow different systems to integrate with each other, and most certainly the all-in-one, 1 and potentially 2 as well. So there is stuff that's coming in the pipeline, but as we are right now, it's not a very good look, I don't think, for those massive companies to be doing that.
Yeah, I think there's the conversation around like what we're actually, say, calling for unofficially really is we have to kind of decide, are we wanting the battery modules to be able to click together, or are we just wanting the systems to talk to each other? And I think the best way to address like the backwards compatibility thing is to allow the innovation in the chemistry, allow the innovation in the capacity, and the connection type, and how these systems are actually kind of put together. The SIG energy side of things has really changed how a lot of battery manufacturers are looking at the batteries clicking together, where it's like a cableless connection. Allowing all that innovation to happen, but we potentially say to brands, look, you need to make that battery you're bringing out be able to talk to the one that you've got tens of thousands in the UK, so that if a customer contacts us as an installer because they've got a Solar Edge battery or a Give Energy battery or a SIG battery or whatever, that new piece of equipment that comes out will be able to be viewed on the app that they're used to seeing, and that your new iteration of the battery is then able to be viewed in there and kind of combined or separated, however you'd want to do it. You could see everything there. It all works together. Yes, you may not be able to fit another battery module onto that existing system, but at least you could have another, the next iteration of that product sat there next to that one in the garage or on the external wall or wherever, and they'll be working together rather than this whole fighting thing. And deeper to that, like you alluded to, Mark, do you go, well, actually, if that brand goes bust, you need a protocol that can be activated. Might be more basic than if you have the same product, but a protocol that be activated where a SolarEdge battery system could talk to a Give Energy battery system. Because if Give Energy weren't around anymore, or SolarEdge weren't around anymore, or any of these brands weren't around anymore, you could basically activate that protocol where you could link them together, and then they would work together. Now, I'm sure it's a lot harder than how I've just proposed it, but I think we're at that stage, like you've alluded to, Matt, where we're like right on the mass adoption phase, where if we don't get it sorted now, there's going to be so many head scratching issues, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a bad thing for us as installers, because we're going to have loads of work ripping old systems out and putting new ones in. But it doesn't feel right for what is a renewables, the sustainability kind of market, to be going, on our high horses saying, look, save the planet, do this, and ripping out 5-year-old systems because they're just not compatible with these new ones.
That's the nail on the head there, isn't it? There's a lot of greenwashing goes on in this industry, isn't there, where we are eco warriors and planet savers, but that doesn't wear true when it's all about selling the next box of kit to replace something that's not been in long enough to justify that. And that's something that we really do have to be careful with. I think there must be some sort of open comms. They all have RS485, don't they? There must be a way of getting that to play nice, whether that's through the Kraken system for Octopus or something else that can be like that. The UN, if you like, peacekeepers of industry where everyone talks through. There must be a way of making that a thing. And, it draws back to the EV charge points that I think we've mentioned on the podcast before, where, customers might already have an EV charge point installed. And if they're wanting that to play nice in the new ecosystem, realistically, they're probably going to have to swap it to the same brand of the battery storage stuff. Because however hard you try with these tricks of blinding stuff with CTs, and, they do work a lot of the time, but sometimes they don't. And the only real safe place to go to, and our recommendation, is to have everything in the same system, and it shouldn't really need to be the case. There must be a very easy way of getting EV charger consumption to be seen by a battery storage system that isn't the same brand. And I mentioned off camera to you that I'd view that more as having like a central boiler needing to have a certain TRV valve or a certain radiator or something. You just wouldn't accept that, would you? It'd be madness. I think that is much needed outside of just the batteries of things as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the problem that we're in, with it being a newish kind of industry, or fairly, it's becoming a really popular industry, is that a lot of these brands are trying to tie installers but also customers into their ecosystem, and that makes complete business sense. You get a customer that has a Give Energy all in one. You want them to have your charger, your water diverter, your whatever, all of your Give Energy stuff. That increases your sales. Same with SolarEdge, they've got a full ecosystem. My Energy obviously started with kind of the ecosystem before the solar and the battery side of things, and all these brands want them to have that ecosystem. But what happens when one of these brands isn't around anymore? And, some of the smaller brands have kind of fallen by the wayside and that over the years, but what happens when something happens with one of these big brands, and suddenly there's like millions of these systems out there in the wild that just don't work anymore, or aren't compatible with latest updates or latest regs and stuff? Because obviously we've seen quite a few different regs changes in EV charging and all this sort of stuff. And like I mentioned before, around the G100, G99, that company has to be there to recertify their piece of equipment. And what happens when that company isn't around anymore to recertify that? So there are certain challenges in the market that is kind of fledgling, like solar and battery and renewables in general. And I think the EV charger one and the ecosystem one, we need to kind of ask and force these brands to open that up a little bit. Still have good benefits of having people choose your equipment, give them greater use of the products, greater features, but at least let other brands of equipment see your system and do the basic functions of making sure that this certain EV charger that's a different brand doesn't suck all the energy out of your battery. That's a lot of the time. That's all the customer wants.
That's exactly it, isn't it? That's all they're really bothered about, and that's the thing that keeps happening. And we had one where it wouldn't work because of the export limit the customer had. So if you did the blinding trick, the inverter would clip the power before the EV could ever make use of it. If you're not aware of this as customers, there are tricks we can do as electricians to stop those EV charge points being seen by the battery systems, but that can cause you a headache when you have got a lower export limit or you've got a particularly large generation on site. So it's not as easy as that. And there's got to be. And I'm thinking of conversations that we've been having with Jason Howlett, who's now left Give Energy and formed this battery storage association. I don't know what it is actually termed. That sounds quite exciting, that maybe that's the kind of thing that they can push. And he's been quite vocal in the fact that, we do have industry representation for heat pumps and even sort of the solar sector, but there's nothing really just focused in and around batteries. And maybe that compatibility issue can be something that they can draw towards as a collective of this new association, perhaps.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting thing that he's set up, and hopefully we can get him on to sort of explain a little bit more about it. But I think from seeing a few things that he's put on LinkedIn and that about this is that, batteries have kind of been this little bolt-on thing that's been within the solar industry, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, solar's the big fish. The batteries are just like a little add-on thing. And actually now with these all tariffs mainly pushed by Octopus, these flexible tariffs, and like that job I showed you with that Sig Energy job where, the AI of that system is now the battery is the main focus of that, and that is what's earning this customer the money and the revenue from their system and the savings. Batteries have to be taken seriously, and there has to be someone fighting for the batteries kind of progression in the regulations, but also in the way that they're advertised and adopted, and things like this where we need to actually take these things seriously, because it's not just a little lead acid battery that's, just sort of half connected to an inverter that you don't know if it's going to set on fire or not. Now there are professional and really high quality battery systems that do all sorts of crazy stuff, but there isn't necessarily the voice for them to be regulated. Regulators may be a bit strong because there are things that regulate them, but like an association that really looks at their individual progression route rather than it always being bolted on by, with solar and things like that. Because, like we've spoken on the podcast before, batteries are quickly becoming an area where people living in flats and things could just have a battery and play the energy market. And with these kind of AI features that these battery systems have now, they can basically turn it on, have it installed, turn it on, set the AI to basically work it out, and then hardly ever look at it again. And that's so powerful.
It is, and I think that's going to enable lots of people to transition to more affordable energy and still be taking effect of greener energy, because usually when power's cheaper, it's because the grid's green. You might not be generating that power directly yourself, but you can certainly store it up in your battery, and the AI functions are amazing. We've been installing that product for a good long while, and the features it's got is just absolutely nuts. And there's other products coming out, I'm sure, that'll be doing that and more as the innovation moves forward. So it's one of those where it does need that representation. And I was kind of thinking there of other products that integrate amongst themselves but not across ecosystems. The only one I could really draw towards was smoke alarms. If you think of like particular products, when you've got your interlinked cable, or even if they're radio interlinked, they are kind of tied to themselves. And that you can have different systems that will come back to a central sort of fire alarm panel. But in terms of that ecosystem of itself, they don't do that. And I wonder if there's worries there with these manufacturers. We're seeing it as well, this keeping it closed shop, sell more of our products. But maybe there's a security and reliability aspect there that they're worried about, that it could open up a back door into their system for malicious acts, or it may cause a fault in their system. And there's all those worries, I suppose. It's maybe too simplistic of us to sit here and say, just open it up and you can all talk to each other and play nice.
Oh, I guarantee it is a lot more, trickier than what we're proposing here. But I think we're not saying we've got the solution to it. I think we just want to pose the question of, is there anything that we can do to really help customers that have an older system not lose out on the progression of the technology? Because some people want a massive system but can't afford it. And that is fine, because these systems aren't a couple of £100. You're in the thousands and tens of thousands sometimes for a system that might actually be the best one for that property because of how much energy it uses, or they want a big backup system. You have to have the money there to pay for it. And if you're looking at this as like a bit of a staged approach, like we've proposed within my install business, where we go, look, do this now, and then we can review it in a year's time, and then we can look at putting your small battery storage in, because the battery storage is the quickest way to remove pounds off that quote. If you reduce the size of the battery system, that's the quickest and easiest way to remove a big chunk of cost from that customer's quote. And so proposing it as a staged process gives the customer a bit of peace of mind that they're going to kind of see how things go, test the water. But it's important to let them know, and we started to do this now, that one of the risks is that the technology moves on and you might not be able to get that battery module in. And sometimes that can feel a little bit pressurizing to the customer. But the reality is, I would hate for them to go, right, Sam, I'm ready for that battery module now. It's exactly a year's time. I can see exactly what you're talking about. You were right. Of course you were right. And I'd like another battery module, please. We go to find it, and the technology's moved on. And we go, sorry, Mr. Smith, your full inverter and battery has to come out because it's not backwards compatible.
Yeah, and we've had jobs like that with the Give Energy All-in-One. Exactly that, things happened. And lots of it is customers who've had heat pumps installed perhaps in the springtime. They're not sure what that winter consumption's going to be, and rather than pile a load of money into batteries that they're maybe never going to use, they want to kind of suck it and see a little bit and then grow the system. And with the Sarge Energy kit, that's a hell of a lot easier because it is modular. They have committed to that mounting frame, and touch wood, that stays the same. They have just had a new battery come out which does just stack on top, and that's an easy win for a customer then, when it is such a simple process, that another battery module straight on top. If you need to grease system heat pumps chewing through a bit more power than you expected, that's how it should be, isn't it? It doesn't solve that bigger issue of people with the older systems of maybe 5-10 years ago, but certainly in the here and now, when a customer's waiting 12 months, get a bit of payback from the solar they've installed, get a bit of benefit from the battery, reinvest that money again into the system if they want and get some more value back from it. That should be a basic, really should. And I think Tesla dropped the ball there, and Give Energy have dropped the ball there, and I'm sure there's other brands as well that I'm not familiar with have done the same. And that backwards compatibility needs to be in place.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were in Munich, me and some of my team were in Munich, and we had a conversation with Solar Edge about their product offering, and they're bringing their Nexus range out. I don't know if it's 26 or 27, but we were discussing, are you making it backwards compatible with the system that's out now? And they're like, no, we're not too sure whether or not to do it. I said, please do it. Please do it, especially a unique system like Solar Edge, because they've got the optimizers. So if they just go, sod it, if that customer goes, sod it, I'll have a different system then. They can't really without taking all the optimizers off or finding one of these mythical Solar Edge keys that deactivate the optimizer, which I've never seen one in the flesh. Like, that's the only way that they could do it. And that poses a real problem, because that customer has bought into like the Solar Edge brand, brought into the unbelievable benefits of having Solar Edge. But if the battery then isn't backwards compatible, and even if they're trying to sell off these batteries and it's still too expensive for that customer at that time, you can't really even just justify it by saying, well, we made our existing batteries really cheap at the time because we wanted to give these people a chance to buy more. It has to be the right time for that customer to buy that extra module. You can't just say we've had a year of selling the battery off cheaper to try and get those people to buy that. For me, I think there would be some comfort, certainly for us as salespeople, if you like, to selling to customers where we say, look, you get this battery system now. There's a commitment there from all brands that sell all equipment that next generation of battery, whenever that comes out, which might be 5 years' time, might be next year, that battery system will be compatible in some way, and that could be in defined. It could be that there's a defined minimum that has to be within kind of the rules of selling batteries in the UK. There's a defined minimum as to how much that compatibility will be, but you will be able to use this system you've got now and a future system together. You will not have to rip these out to get some form of compatibility. It might be that the compatibility is better if it's all the same system, like the same generation of equipment, but the backwards compatibility to a certain usable minimum is this. So you can buy with confidence that you're not going to get locked out of expanding your system.
Yeah, and for Solar Edge, that's an absolute no-brainer for them to ensure they've got that backwards compatibility. I think that'd be a massive mistake on their part if they didn't listen to your advice on that one, because there's a lot of people who've adopted into that kit who will be wanting to have batteries added or grown. And if it's the same principle, they're having to swap everything out, they're probably going to be looking at other brands. So I think it's one of those where it's really important for them to do that. And I was just thinking then as well about kind of other circumstances that would play a part in that decision for a customer. You know, it's not just about the cost of it, it's the hassle as well, isn't it? So if you're turning around to them and saying, we need to take all of your kit out and reinstall this other kit and the faff and mess with that, some of them would probably just say no and not bother even scaling the system, manage and make do and with the kit they've got. And that's just a big shame, isn't it? I think it needs to be bottomed out, and whether that's through product standards or something like this battery storage association or whatever it is, I'm not sure. Maybe the European legislation can do it. I'm thinking like phone chargers when everyone swaps to these USB-C ones now because the EU told them they had to. Maybe there'll be something along those lines as batteries become more prominent that the EU turn around and say, well, actually, no, you can't do that. It all needs to play nice with each other or you're not selling in our market. Maybe that's the kind of level it'll get to in the end.
Do you think we could get them on? Get the
EU on.
Do you have enough chairs? Be nice. It would be nice to have something like that put down fairly soon, which, you know, the reality is it's probably not going to be fairly soon, but so that when these brands are developing their next generation of equipment, they're taking this into account. And I think if a brand really wants to stand out in the UK, it is making sure that that backwards compatibility is there, because there isn't really that many brands that do make things backwards compatible. And I think there would be a really good opportunity there and a good marketing opportunity there for a brand to basically stand up, put their head above the parapet and go, look, our systems will always be 1 or 2 generations backwards compatible, because we think it's fair that our customers that have bought into our brand will be able to expand their system without the fear of having to just rip it all out. I think that would be great. But that kind of moves me on to the whole panel debacle, because the panels arguably are even harder to alter because of the frame size, because of the feed-in tariff, and because of the output that they give out.
It's a nightmare, isn't it? I mean, we've not really experienced that in my installation business yet because we're still 2 or 3 years in, but I imagine this has been a repeating problem for you. You just look at some of these small panels, even from 5-10 years ago, and you take one of them off a roof and look at the panel sizes we've got now in the physical shape, as you've just said, and the wattage, and you're trying to get that to play nice with a feed-in tariff, and it's a mess, isn't it? It really is. And what the solution is with that is it strip the whole system off, and as you've said, you put a nice black panel on next to some silver framed and lined ones, and it's like,
yeah, it's a real tricky one, Matt, because, you know, I'm pretty sure the old frame size when I was fitting it was 1640 by 996. That was the frame size.
Sounds better to me. That's a much nicer size.
Fantastic. They were too big for us then, but now they seem like little tiny panels. But yeah, 1640 tall by 996, I think they were wide. And now we're at like the ones that we're fitting are 1762 by 1134. So they are, the frame size is much bigger. And it's, depending on the roof, can you know, the head and the orientation of the panels depends which measurement is the worst for you. But a lot of the time, these feed-in tariff systems are usually 2 rows of 8, 16 panels in portrait, and because they're 1640, you can fit them on most roof sizes in that kind of format, you know, with some exceptions. But the problem is now, if you have a 250 watt panel that goes down, you've got a 1640 hull by 996, and you've got a panel that's 1760 tall by 1134 wide. The rail is all cut millimeter perfect to the end of the end clamp, and so suddenly you're having to go, right, I need to move everything across a little bit to create a gap of 1134 mil. But I'll go off the end of my rails. The panel is jet black. These other ones are silver and blue. My output of my system is not going to be 250 watts on that panel. It's going to be 450 watts. So then there's this whole thing about whether or not then you have to remove two panels and put one 455 watt panel, but then you've lost a bit of generation there potentially. If you did just install the one 455 watt panel in place of the 250 watt panel, there's then an awkward and a difficult conversation to have with your feed-in tariff provider. All these things start to happen, and then that's before you even get to the aesthetics of the system. And suddenly they've got a big black spot in the middle of a big blue face. and yeah, we've had it before where we've gone, right, there's a few ways we can tackle this. One of your panels has been smashed by a cricket ball or by whatever, or it's just died. And you go, right, we can't get that panel anymore. Even if you claim it under warranty, a lot of these providers will send you their best match and then go, good luck, and you sort it out kind of thing. And so often you end up going, right, well, you've got 5 panels on this side of the roof. That middle one is knackered. So we're going to take that one off and we're going to put you a black one on. And the customer goes, well, that's not going to look very good, is it? You go, no, that's going to look terrible. So the next thing we do is, well, okay, well, we could change all 5 for black ones, but your generation is going to go up. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. Yeah, but you're part of a feed-in tariff. Right, okay. So then you have to kind of work out, okay, well, 5 of these panels at X output equals this kilowatt peak on that roof. So I'm going to have to, instead of putting 5 panels up, I'm going to put 3 panels on to hit the same output. But then there's all this roof space that's empty, and the customer kind of goes, well, I'd like to use that roof space. So there's all these challenges around one panel failing. You can end up unraveling the whole system. And that's before you even get onto like the stringing and whether or not 3 panels that are a higher wattage are even going to start that inverter because the start voltage of the inverter. So you end up unraveling this install where you're like, oh my God, this has turned into much more than just changing a panel out. And it's given me a bit of a sweat just thinking about that sort of scenario. Because I guarantee I'm going to get an email with something like that tomorrow.
Yeah, and the other side of that is if they're going to the trouble of putting scaffold up to change that one panel, a lot of customers might just lean on the fact of swapping for more, growing the systems, and it's really tricky, isn't it? I wonder if there should be like a standardised frame size that panel manufacturers have to hit and stick to, because you mentioned about the 1762, 1134, they're the ones we fit, but there's ones out there now that are in 1900s, 2 meters, and typically they're on commercial roofs because you won't want to be lugging them up on a domestic house. But that's not to say that it isn't going to start being a thing if they get a bit lighter, maybe. You know, it's more the weight of them, isn't it, than anything else. So, it's like, where do you start and end with that? Can you even legislate for it? Or should panel manufacturers be made to keep stock for 20 years to cover their warranty repairs of the same frame sizes? We know that's not what happens, but should they be doing it?
Yeah, I think there probably should be. I don't think you can really legislate for the same frame size going forward because that really will sort of impinge on kind of the innovation side of things, because a lot of these brands, they've increased the efficiency of the panels, but the efficiency is only the output by the surface area that it covers. And so you kind of think, well, yeah, your efficiency's gone up, but your surface area has gone up as well. And they're squeezing out another 100 watts out of that panel, but it's added 50 mil to the top end of the panel or more, 100 mil, 150 mil. And so then that's causing us all these knock-on effects. I personally think because one part I didn't mention there was the depth of the panels as well. The depth of the panels often is 40 mil if it's a fairly old system. I can't remember if there was some 45s. I think it was just 40 now. And and now we're down to 30 mil and 35 on some bigger panels, but usually 30 mil on the most domestic panels. And you're kind of like, well, surely if you've offered a warranty of 20 years on that panel, the customer shouldn't be expected to remove all of those panels just to replace the one that has gone faulty under your warranty, unless you're going to pay for all these panels to be replaced. And no manufacturer is going to pay for that. And so it's kind of a bit of a loophole for the manufacturer, because they kind of go, well, there's the panel that we've got for you, take it or leave it kind of thing. And actually they should be able to provide you with a panel that fits the hole that they've got and the output that they've got. Surely they can make some 250 watt panels.
You'd have thought so, wouldn't you? And like you say, the size of it, but also the voltage and current of them as well. That'll probably be different, I would have thought. And is that going to affect how the rest of the array behaves because of that panel at a different? I mean, if it's got solar edge on it, it isn't it? But if it's just a basic string, maybe that would become part of the equation as well. And yeah, I'm sure as these things need replacement, because nothing's infallible, panels will go wrong, accidents will happen. It could be that, like you said, a cricket ball or a rock getting dropped onto them. Panels break, don't they? They just do. And it shouldn't be such a big task to put it back to how it was if there is a warranty expectation on that product. We certainly can't keep stock of panels in our installation business for every single type we install for the next 20 years. I'm damn sure we can't, and I'm sure you can't either. But
yeah, we're not the ones on. We're not the ones with the warranty, are they?
We're not.
We're not the ones offering the warranty.
No, we're not. So it shouldn't be up to installers. We'll provide the service of going to swap it. But yeah, you're right. If you've got some all black panel going in the middle of an array that's not the same size, not the same depth, with not the same electrical characteristics, that's not, for me, a warranty process that is going to work. And fair play on you for calling it out. Whether anyone will actually do anything or not remains to be seen, doesn't it? But that's, for all intents and purposes, that's probably a bigger problem than the one we've gone on about at the start of this conversation with batteries integrating and stuff, because, you know, there's workarounds for that are a little bit easier than getting up on someone's roof and taking a system apart, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, the scaffolding alone, you're $1,000 in the hole before you've even, stepped foot on the roof, just getting the scaffolding up, depending on where it is, how many faces and all of that. And you obviously brought up Solar Edge there, and that's been one of my, I think one of the untapped superpowers of Solar Edge is going to be that integration with these panels as they get replaced. Like, I can't wait for the feed-in tariff 25-year period to end, because that will open up firstly, a lot of these systems will be 25 years old-ish. So you're going to get to the point where it's like, right, these systems are reaching towards the end of their life anyway. So it makes that decision to replace all of the panels quite easy. The people that are living in those houses, might have bought that house, after year 10 and had the feed-in tariff transferred to them. So suddenly it's not as they haven't felt the outlay of the 10 grand or 20 grand or whatever they spent, whatever that system cost when it was installed. If that customer has sold the house since then and passed over the feed-in tariff, that customer that's bought the house hasn't felt the cost of that system, so are a little bit more open to spending more on it because they've had the feed-in tariff there, they've had the power there and everything, and they've heard a lot about solar. So I feel like this will be a really tense issue for the next 5-10 years or whatever, however long it's going to be till a lot of these systems reach the end of their life in terms of the feed-in tariff. But it's certainly a short-term to medium-term head-scratcher that we've got to get through, because there's going to be tens of thousands of these systems that need repairing on the panel side between now and when the feed-in tariff period ends for everybody. Because there's still people that are might be on 10 pence per kilowatt hour feed-in tariff, but it's still better than a poke in the eye, that, isn't it? Just for generating the power, you're getting 10p. Most of the people on the feed-in tariff in the early days are on like 70 pence per kilowatt hour now. I was speaking to one yesterday or the other day that was on 70p now and was terrified of us jeopardising the feed-in tariff. And I did get a bit of a sweat on when we were looking at what we were going to do with their system. But I think the short-term to medium-term problem is that repairing, and SolarEdge does offer that ability to mix and match the panels because the optimizer is smoothing things out. But the issue is you have to actually have SolarEdge installed, which, again, to a feed-in tariff registered system, you can change the inverter and you can change the operating system, but you have to take all the panels off to fit all the optimizers and everything. And it's like, does that customer want that cost just because they're wanting a couple of extra panels, a couple of panels adding to the system because 2 panels have failed? It's like there's all these, like the intercompatibility of the panels and all of that is kind of solved by SolarEdge, but you've got to replace the full system for SolarEdge. Keep the panels, but the inverter's got to change, all the optimizers have got to go on. There's a lot of work there to do, all very possible, and I've done quite a few storage upgrades on properties, but it's whether or not the customer wants to outlay that much money.
Yeah, that's what it traces back to, isn't it? If they see the value there or they want the data from it, then they will. And if they don't, then they won't, I suppose. And that is a great way of being able to tie a system together when you are retrofitting. I think Solar Edge would be the way to go with that, wouldn't it? It makes a lot of sense. But yeah, it's been an interesting chat, this one, Sam. I think it's one of those subjects that consumers will be maybe more interested in than the installers out there. And hopefully some people out in industry with smarter than us can put pressure on people to get some of this sorted out, because it's us as installers that have to kind of deal with it. We're the ones speaking with customers who just want their systems to be fixed and to work, or to grow and scale it. And, we're in this dicey middle territory of speaking to manufacturers and speaking to the customers and trying to get solutions, really. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Solutions.
Yeah, it is. And I think, we'd love to have someone on that has maybe got a bit of experience in the maybe product standards, or, has either got a bit of experience in this kind of area as to what could potentially be done. So if you're watching this and thinking, I know a bit about that, come on, have a chat with us. We'd love to push that forward. But it is a bit of a problem. And like you say, customers might be wanting to think about this a little bit when they're thinking of getting a new system, but installers are the ones that are informing the customers most commonly. So if you're an installer listening to this, it's kind of educating yourself on what systems out there will hopefully provide the most flexibility, or what brands have kind of committed to that intercompatibility going forward. Like you mentioned, SIG Energy have kind of committed to that to a degree. Quite easy for them to commit to that when they've got one kind of product line out. So we'll see what happens when innovation kind of takes over. But yeah, fingers crossed they stick to that. But there's some other brands out there that have mentioned things like that. I know Solar Edge have mentioned in the past about that, but whether or not this Nexus range does that or not, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, it's been an interesting chat, and yeah, it's been good to kind of shooting that across each other's bows to see what your experiences are as well as mine.
Yeah, it's different. It's been out in Italy in the sunshine, isn't it? Talking to manufacturers about their products to get back to a technical topic. I've really enjoyed it. It's always good to sit and chat with you about stuff that's predates my time in the industry, a lot of this. So it's good education for me, and hopefully it's been useful to the people watching along with us as well. I'll let you take us out on this one, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so thank you very much for coming back and listening to another episode of the Renewables Podcast. If you've liked what we've spoken about, please give us a like, maybe share the episode if you do agree this is a bit of an issue that we need to talk about more. So thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe and all that jazz. We'll see you on the next one.